Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well. Welcome to today's upload. Before we jump into it, a couple quick links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost you a cent. Click that like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads that I put out daily, click the bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment and share the video. Why? Well, because all of these things, they really help this channel to continue to grow and go. They definitely do matter, and they are appreciated. And with that, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to today's upload, shall we? All right, so yesterday's upload was a gentleman named Patrick, and he and I spoke the previous day for about 40 minutes, 10 give or so minutes while he was at his house. And then he kind of lost track of time, and he's like, listen, we can finish this conversation tomorrow, or I can give you some information on my ride to get my kids, which will take a half an hour. But we'll have to cut it short, and then we can finish it up the next day. And I said, whatever you want to do. Honestly, I'm not questioning anything. I can share experiences. It's up to you. And he said, all right, let's do this. And so we did. And his experience, he was a park ranger. He had, at the age of 21, completed his certification to be able to carry a firearm park ranger, law enforcement officer, park ranger / whatever. And he had previously worked for the parks department from the time he was 18 years old. So he was not a newbie, but he was still kind of the low man on the totem pole. Lincoln County, Wyoming. And he was in an area, not the Grand Teton, but he was actually in the Bridger Teton National Park, which is just south of the Grand Teton National Park. Now, there are two mountains that are in this area that he had to go to. He was sent on kind of a welfare check. There was 3 female campers / hikers and 1 male, boyfriend, girlfriend, 2 best friends. And so he was, apparently what was supposed to happen was these kids were camping in kind of this valleyed area between Dead Man Mountain and Middle Ridge South. For a few days they spent traversing Dead Man Mountain area, and their plan, which they had given their whole kind of itinerary to their family. This is what we're going to do. One of the girls was supposed to contact her family on a certain day when they got to Middle Ridge South or got into the Grand Teton area. And this all occurred in 1999. So pre-cell phones like we have now. And the family called. Being the low man on the totem pole, he was sent out almost kind of like a welfare check to check and see where these kids were. They were older than him by a couple of years. And so he jumped on a four-wheeler, one of those 4x4 four-wheelers. This is like pre side-by-sides like we have now and such. So, you know, a Honda Big Red with racks in the front, racks in the back is typically what Rangers used. Anything four-wheel drive, usually shaft-driven. Jumps on that, got his gear with him, and heads out. Gets to a location where he knew roughly the coordinates of where the kids would be. And I keep saying kids even though they were older than him because they were in their 20s at the time. So they were kids compared to myself and him now. So he gets off of his four-wheeler. He had, from the time he had gotten into a little bit after the Middle Ridge South, he had a feeling of like he was being watched. Not the kind of dread feeling, but something like something was off, something was watching him. He didn't feel like he was in danger yet. He proceeds to drive onto one of these little trails, park ranger accessible trails. And he ends up stopping the four-wheeler because he did, at this point, he started to get that overwhelming feeling of being watched with a little bit of dread. He jumps off the wheeler. He hears a scream. A female screaming, "Help me, help me." And he kind of sat for a moment and listened because he had just gotten off this four-wheeler. He had been riding for an hour. Hang on one second. I gotta let the mascot in. So he hears this scream and he proceeds to, he responds, hang on. He actually notifies or responds with, you know, his name and I'm a park ranger. Continue to speak so I can hear you. Are you okay? Are you one of these three girls? Obviously, you could tell it was not one of the guys because it's definitely a female screaming. As he's standing on the trail, he kind of thinks about where, and this is something that has baffled him this whole, the 40-minute conversation was, the majority of it was centered around the one part, and he purposely looked at the comment section yesterday to see if anyone had any kind of response on what, and a few of you did, and a few of you agreed or had the same idea I had, and he had as well. So he starts to walk through this set of woods, and he's, you know, not very long, a couple of minutes. He can hear her voice getting closer, and he kind of cuts and cuts, but not enough. He never V'd. That's the key, most important part. He never kind of arced back to the trail. He was going kind of at a diagonal, but, you know, still had to go around some obstacles in the woods, came to another trail. And he looks this way, looks that way, gets his kind of bearings, hears her, starts to look and proceed down, sees their campsite off to the side, and sees that there's two tents, and what appears to be some packs. Not a lot, not a very large campsite at all. and he continues to follow her voice. He sees her. She is tucked into this kind of notch or like little just small area of this kind of V shape in this tree. And she's made herself very small. She is dehydrated. She is hungry. She is lacking sleep. She also has an ankle that is very large and purple. He runs over. He, gives her some water. And he proceeds to talk to her and say, what in all happened? Can you fill me in on everything? And this is where everything kind of just really got strange for him. So they proceed, he helps her up. And I'm not going to go too much into detail on the account with them. If you want to hear it, you can listen to yesterday's upload. They were savagely, they were attacked. As they are walking, as Patrick is walking this young lady out of the woods, helping her, might hear some sirens in a moment, but he's got her all her weight on him as he's walking. They walk down the trail. They walk into the woods to get to the four-wheeler. She fills him in on where her friends are. She doesn't know. They have an entire conversation. And he realizes that, holy shit, we've been hiking on this little patch of woods that only took me 3 or 4 minutes to get through the first time. Something like a half an hour. And he looks at her and he says, the other trail should be here. He's like, we've been hiking for way too long. And at that point, he's now kind of trying to figure out, did something happen? So they make the decision to turn back around and get back to the trail that they just left. She finishes the story on how or what had occurred. This large creature that kind of stalked them for what seemed like forever, had them pinned down in their campsite. Their tents were together. They had a fire pit in front of them. So they had put the tents kind of together as a precaution, 3 young ladies, 1 guy, on a remote, isolated area. So it was done out of safety, and it was actually a wise decision because nothing could get behind them the night that kind of shit hit the fan. So this creature had pushed them, or had kind of trapped them, and it kept proceeding to come into their camp, and they had to take off running. She had lost her friend. Anyway, they eventually get back to the trail, and they get to the wheeler. And he gets her propped up, gets his first aid kit out. And he's adamantly thinking about how none of this is adding up. Not her story and not the occurrence of what happened to them, but what he is experiencing. This trek of woods. They turned around. He knew for a fact that he walked through a small set of woods between two trails. And then they turn around and boop, there's the wheeler, boop, there's the campsite. And he's just in utter shock. But he's like, I need to take care of this girl and make sure she's all right. So he, gets out their first aid, bandages her leg, isolates it, kind of splints it, gives her some Tylenol. And at this point, he hears some, they waited for a little bit of time had passed. And they hear a four-wheeler or one or two four-wheelers coming into the trail. And he sees that it's his coworkers. Now, this whole time, he had a park ranger who was messing with him, kind of hazing him. And that's what he was thinking, like, this is some sort of hazing. Maybe there isn't 3 missing people. Obviously she's hurt, but he can't make any sense of any of this, because when they get off the four-wheelers and start to approach and talk to him, there was a large gap of time between what happened, him leaving the main park ranger station to getting to her. Not very long. A couple of hours. Finding her, the walk, preparing everything, and then them showing up. He realized that 13 to 14 hours had passed. An entire night had passed. He looks at her and he adamantly says, how long? Because he had talked to the other park rangers and he's talking about a different trail. None of this is making sense. He's like, there's a trail here. There isn't a trail. I don't know what happened. I can't make sense of this. They tell him, hey, you've been out here all night. And he's like, no night. There was no night. There was nothing. There was 4 hours. Her and I had been together. No, any kind of night. At that point, he and I ended up letting each other go. So, there is one living right now and one missing, 2 found. That's where he ended it. The not boyfriend and girlfriend, but the boyfriend and her best friend were found. The girlfriend was missing. And during all of his explaining what happened on that night, there was a couple of things that I wasn't sure of, and that's what I'm going to fill in with you guys right now. I'm going to fill in the search and rescue part. He was actually, when he got back to the main park ranger station, they had taken him to the hospital and did an assessment on him because he almost seemed like he was speaking crazy, adamant about there was no night. So they were just, maybe he had crashed the four-wheeler, something. They couldn't figure out why he didn't understand that there was a large gap of time and not just a short gap of time. So this is technically kind of what I shared with you, a brief, but like I said, if you want to hear about that experience, you can go back and listen to yesterday's. This is the rest of the experience that he shared with me that really changed his life. and his view on the world that he thought he knew. So this is what occurred during the search and recovery for the other three. This is all, the majority of it is secondhand information that he had gotten from his fellow park rangers, because he was not part of the search and recovery. If you're wondering why I'm looking up at my ceiling, one of those centipedes, those walking eyebrows, is right on my ceiling right now. Oh my God, I hate those things, but they kill bugs. So I guess what occurred was they had rescued her and him. He's out for 2 days. When they come back, they now know that they have 3 missing campers/hikers. 2 female, 1 male. They find the male. The male is draped over a branch like 40 feet in the air. A large tree. And he's kind of draped over it like you would kind of hang a blanket. The not so normal part, or actually none of it's normal, I shouldn't even say not, is he was, when they found him, and they only found him because they kept hearing like a kind of creaking of the branches when they get close to the trees. They weren't looking up for some reason. They weren't looking, which is strange because you think park rangers would be taught to always kind of be vigilant of your surroundings, and that is even above you. You know, I know when I go hiking that I keep looking around. I try to watch all of the area. That's how I had seen that one tree when I was up where Tom Mezek disappeared just recently, where there were claw marks all the way up this tree. It stopped maybe 20 feet up, and then more. So you have to be vigilant of what is around you. And that just doesn't mean around you or on the ground. That means above you. Because even if it's not a cryptid, it could be a large cat. It could be a bobcat. It could be a lynx. It could be a mountain lion. Hell, even bears climb trees, you know? So they find him, and he is draped on this branch. They kind of are looking at him, and it doesn't dawn on them until this is that he is not draped, like stomach touching the tree. His back is arched on the tree. So he's in a U-shaped position, kind of like The Exorcist, when the Exorcist girl walks upside down in like that U shape. They're trying to figure out how to get him down. They're like, but it doesn't dawn on them until a few minutes into it, and they realize, holy shit, he's kind of upside down. His spine is broken. They kind of shimmy up the tree. They realize they can't. They send one of the rangers back to the park ranger station and have him get a extension ladder. The main ranger in charge, actually, when he is told what the predicament was, they brought down 2 ladders and some planks, and they ended up getting up there, and they realized that he was, even though his body was draped over this, or what they thought was over this branch, his body was pierced through. So almost like the stick so his body, this is the branch, and like this is his body, like it was pierced through. So it was going through his stomach area. And once they realized that, they're kind of like, all right, we got to cut him out. We got to cut him down, because how else are we going to, and then they realize, so they don't realize there's a lot to this, because they don't realize that he's in that U-shaped upside down position. But when they do, they're in shock. And then when they realize that the end of the branch has more branches and more leaves, and so there is no physical possible way of him being skewered like that. There's also not a lot of blood on the ground. This is, once again, he got all of this information from the guy he thought was razzing him and hazing him. They ended up becoming really good friends. Actually, after this, they did. And another ranger that he was pretty close with prior to this, there was not a lot of blood, which there should have been, a shit ton. Especially if he was pierced, the way his body was positioned. But how did this occur? It's not like you can unscrew the branch and put it through and screw it back on. No. So, strange thing one, right? They realize that they have to cut the branch down. And out of respect, but more so out of kind of a medical examiner's view, we can't just cut the branch and let him drop. So what they did was they almost made like a pulley system. They tied 2 ropes onto the branch, drooped it over another branch, kind of made a pulley. So after that branch was cut from the tree, it just wouldn't crash down. So they had 3 or 4 rangers down guiding those 2 ropes. When they do, and eventually get him off of that, they cut the branch, so he was transported with like a chunk of wood in him. His back was not broken. His position, any person of any kind of common sense would immediately think, hey, his back's broken. He's, how the hell did this happen? But no. He was somehow draped and skewered onto a large branch. So they get him down. A few of the guys are shook by now. They're kind of like, what the hell? A few of them are looking around like there was a lot of fear. And almost like an unexplained, the way he was told by the older gentleman or the older ranger that was razzing him it was almost like the woods didn't want us there. It was almost like something in those woods was, one, we felt like we were being watched the whole time they were out there. And 2, when they were trying to get him down and manipulate the branch and try to do it, they were under the impression that any time or any moment something was going to come out of the woods at any random spot and attack them. And at this point, there's not too many park rangers on staff right there. There's maybe 6. So they secure him onto a four-wheeler. They bring his body back they put him in a body bag, drag him with like one of those sleds behind the four-wheeler. His body didn't touch the ground. There was no disrespect. Key thing, and that was one of the things he said, like, this was done with the utmost respect, and all of the rules, everything was followed to the letter. All the T's were crossed, I's were dotted. That's why they made the pulley system and didn't let him drop. Because if they had let him drop, here's the thing, if they had let him drop, and Patrick said this, they probably wouldn't have known that his back was not broke, because it probably would have broke from that drop. His body would have just, smashed from a 40-foot drop with a branch skewering his lower area of his stomach. Now, the next job is to find the other two missing girls. All of this is getting transmitted back to the ranger station. Some more rangers are coming out. They started calling in. And it was almost done in-house until once they brought the body back, and medical examiner was contacted. Then the police had to come and get involved, because there's a body in unusual circumstances. So now you have from 5 or 6 rangers, now there's about 20 law enforcement officers out there, including the park rangers. So during all of this, they had asked the young lady that was found by Patrick, well, she's in the hospital recovering. They're trying to kind of get any kind of information from her that they can gather. She's obviously in shock, dehydrated. She's in not very great condition, but alive. And they're like, who, they did not tell her about her friend until later on. She found out later on, but who was the last person when you and your friend took off running? What was the last thing you saw of her? Because she had explained how, and she let them know, she didn't, not just Patrick, but she told them that they were trapped by this creature. This very strange, orangish, golden-eyed creature. And it ran through the fire at them. And that's when they took off running. 2 went that way, 2 went that way, and into the woods. They automatically assumed, because when she had said, my best friend, we ran that way. And the boyfriend and girlfriend, they ran that way. But she lost her best friend. She, at one point, stopped and looked and could not locate her friend, and made herself as small as possible. The next thing she kind of remembers of that night was the boyfriend's girlfriend, her other very good friend, finding her. And because she had been walking, she almost walked past the girl, the girl that was hurt. And she had whispered her name when she realized that it was her. Because she's looking for this eye shine. Her friend stops and looks at her and says, gets low to her, and says, what's her name? And I'm saying, what's her name? Because he specifically asked me not to share any of their names. And where is my boyfriend? Have you seen him? And she's like, I haven't seen anyone for quite some time now. Maybe 2 or 3 minutes into whatever happened, whatever just happened, you know. And she tries to help her up. She doesn't realize that her leg is messed up, her friend. And she lets out this kind of pained screech. And the girl immediately kind of lets go and goes, are you okay? And she's like, oh, Jesus, it's right above me now. How did it get above me? Hang on, I gotta hit pause. All right, sorry about that. That thing was over there, and then it was above me, and I used canned air to get it over there, and it landed on the Bigfoot. I grabbed the Bigfoot and tossed it out into the hallway, so it's not dead, so it can still do its job, killing other little bugs, but at least it's not going to bother me. So I hate those centipede things, man. They are so terrifying. And yeah. So I'm so sorry. I will go in the woods hiking in an area where Tom Messick disappeared by myself. But I am petrified of centipedes, those little walking eyebrows. Anyway. She tells them what occurred. She lets out this kind of screech. And immediately she kind of just drops down again and gets into that fetal bald position, and they hear this just kind of weird growling, almost like a yell, like this just a really strange kind of guttural sound. It wasn't like a dog, it was not a scream. He can't explain it because he didn't hear that night, you know, so he's just going off of what she said. And her friend takes off running and just says, I'm sorry, and leaves her. And for the rest of the time, that's where she is. She didn't hear any other noise that whole time except for when Patrick came up with the four-wheeler. That was the first, and basic woodsy noise. They never found her body. They had kind of fanned out, did almost a basic grid search 20-something years ago. Technology wasn't what it is now. So you are mapping things out and such. You can't, there was no computer program like we have nowadays. They ended up locating her a couple days into this search and recovery, and she was a mile, almost going towards Grand Teton, or Teton. And when they found her, she was lying on her stomach, face down in the dirt, and her arms were sprawled out. This is what Patrick had told me. She never witnessed this. Like, he never heard the noise that he only went off of what she told him about that noise. Because he's actually still in contact with her to this day. They became friends. And when she was found, they ran up, kind of flipped her over, and there was no any kind of damage to her. Her face was, her eyes were closed, her mouth was closed. She was just sprawled out face first like that. There was no There was no claw marks. There were no bites. It was almost as if she died from exposure. Later to find out she had a coronary, she had a heart attack. These kids were not that old. They were only a couple years older than Patrick at the time. You know, so 25, 26. Not coronary, you know, quality age, you know. So there was no any kind of physical damage to her. They proceeded to look for almost 3 weeks, the rest of the search and recovery, and never found the other girl. So when all of this is going on, Patrick remembers he was grilled by, and this is interesting because this right here made me start to make sense of some things that I've questioned for a while now. Because like in the Tom Mezek case, I said, why did the FBI get involved? I've asked state police, I've asked family members that were involved in this, in the Mezek case, that were law enforcement, and no one knows. Or if they did know, they aren't saying. But he was questioned extensively by the FBI. Their questions centered around not what she said about this strange events of being attacked by whatever this was, but the loss of time. Your trip, when you got off that trail and went into the woods, and then you realized that you had been hiking for a half an hour, what was that whole, you know, how did you feel? Did you feel this? Did you feel like you were being watched? Did you feel a sense of dread? Did you feel hopelessness? Did you, did you hear anything? Any kind of strange noise that would be out of the ordinary for being that far into the deep wilderness. So now, that only, Patrick and I talked about this a little bit. Possibly the reason why the FBI gets involved on these cases, and only a select few, when some sort of rift or portal is opened. Not that they can do anything about it, but almost so they can record it. Not like record like with a camera or anything, but like record and report on it to their higher ups. Because, what are they going to, how are they going to close a portal down? They're just human beings. They're the FBI, but they are a basic Joe, Compared to a portal, they are a basic Joe. Compared to the supernatural, the paranormal, the high strangeness, cryptids, they are nothing. To us, they are FBI agents with badges and guns and the ability to take our freedom. But to so they are only there to record and report. And then, vámonos. Which is exactly what happened in the Tom Mezek case. Exactly what happened in that case. And then he says, Jeff, now that we are talking about this is after we were talking for a while today, or yesterday. I'm recording this, obviously. Now that you know what I just shared with you, he said, doesn't it make sense with why the FBI was up where Tom Mezek disappeared? And how very quickly they came in, didn't do much, interviewed the people that were with Tom, talked to a few people that had been in the woods on the search and rescue for Tom Messick, but then left. Record and report. Metallic sound was heard when Tom Messick was out in those woods by a family member. I have physically recorded on video on my channel, the metallic sounds on the day Tom Messick disappeared, November 15th, 2024. I have that on my channel. 9 years to the day. So he then asked the girl, did you hear, what did you hear? Did you hear? When she found out that the guy friend was only like 40 feet, 50 feet from where she was, but in the air, she never heard a scream, any kind of noise from that. And you'd think that even if there was a possibility or a way of being skewered by a branch and having that branch reconnected to that, because there's no way it could have just, there's no way of him being in that position. It is impossible. But yet it happened. He and I talked about that for quite some time. But at the end of it all, they never find the other girl. To me, the experience that these kids experienced that night, the night of, with whatever, if it was a Dogman, some sort of demonic creature from wherever, some sort of portal. Yes, that's the thing that gets me the most, is the fact that how in God's name did whatever happened to that young man happen. To me, that's the biggest mystery and the most strangest part of the event. He was questioned. He had gone back to work. And periodically, he would be brought into an office and by his higher-ups and asked questions about, years later, about anything that occurred that he didn't remember, but now he's remembering. He does not work for the parks department. He's not a park ranger anymore. He was for quite some time. But then as he started getting older, he decided that, I can't do this anymore. It was a career that he loved, but the politics of it was what got him, not this event, the politics of it all. He has no fear of sharing this. He actually asked the girl or woman before even reaching out to me if he was, and the key thing was, don't share her name, share my name, don't share her name or the other three, please. And at the end of it all, the FBI just kind of let it be. They were more focused on that time, the time of walking. What did you hear? What did you see? What did you feel? Did she say anything to you about anything other than do you remember any of those hours that you lost And as time has gone by, he does remember that at one point on their walk into the woods to find that first trail that's not there, but when they had turned around, he had thought that he had seen a bright light, like the sky kind of lit up quick and then back to normal. He has since asked her. She doesn't remember that. She has the same kind of time frame that he has still to this day, but he has these kind of offshoot moments of there was some darkness, maybe there was, but he doesn't know if it was if that is true, or if it is, if he got caught in a portal. I think, and he thinks that he didn't go into a portal, but if a portal opens and there's enough energy pushed out from this portal, could it affect time around it? And that's relativity, whatnot. And yes, it could. Theoretically, it could. But he just doesn't know. Like he's like, when we were walking, he's like, I have a feeling that yes, it was dark for, some time as we had turned around, but I don't have, it's like a beginning of a story, or maybe like 30 seconds into a 2-hour movie. You know what I mean? Like, it's just there. So, unfortunately, Patrick, unless he decides to do, what is that called? Hypnosis. My brain shut off because there's an alarm system going off right now. I think someone broke into the synagogue diagonally from my house. He's contemplated on doing hypnosis, but part of him doesn't want to because he doesn't think he wants to remember exactly what happened. And he's afraid that if he does do hypnosis, that these memories will flood back in and really cause him some severe mental pain and such. But if he does, he said, if I do it, he said, and you're still a channel, he goes, because I'm not doing it tomorrow. He said, I'm probably not going to do it in a year. He said, but if I ever do it, it'll be, within the next 5 years. If I do it and you're still a channel, he goes, I will let you know. He said, or if I have any kind of remember or memory come flooding back, he goes, I will let you know. She, to this day, is adamant that what they saw was, and she listens to YouTube channels. She watches like the Josh Gates exploration and such. She's convinced that she saw that creature was a Dogman. For the longest time, she thought Bigfoot. But then when the knowledge of Dogman and people talking about it came, to a head, she then realized that sounds much more similar to what we saw than a Bigfoot. Now, I did a little background on this region, and there was a lot of Native American lore, a lot of Native American spirituality. a lot of battles between different tribes, different nations, and some very strange kind of goings-ons in the 1800s up until present day, you know. We may never know what happened. My whole thing of this is, and Patrick and I started to talk about this. I almost didn't bring this up, but what if here? This may sound far-fetched or stupid, or like just a stupid theory, but what if whatever that thing was came out of a portal, right? Let's say it is a Dogman, and it came out of a portal, and everything kind of just shifted. The time, relativity, everything just shifted for moments. What if, like the Eldritch and the Philadelphia experiment, when the Eldritch reappeared and there were supposed men like stuck in the hall, like hanging half out, screaming. What if he had gotten caught through something, got transported, and that's how he was, or when he came back to this time and physical area is where he was. And that's how he was, like, just, that's the only thing. He and I talked a little bit about that. He never thought about it. For some reason, I started to think about it because of my fascination with these portals. On the live stream, someone asked, what's the percentage of Dogman missing 411s? And, you know, like I said in that live stream, I said a long time ago, I would have said 80%. I literally would have said 80%. And meant it. But that's so high and so not even realistic. It's like maybe 5%, maybe, and that's high. But, you know, I'd have to agree with the man that brought the 411 to the world's eye, you know, that there is something much stranger going on in these national parks, in our forests. Heck, not even in just America's, in worldwide. There is so many events happening that if you really think about it, it almost makes Bigfoot and Dogman look tame. We have things that are going on this planet that we couldn't even fathom, and that's scary. That's really scary. Right there, that quick pause is why I'm envious of him taking a half an hour. He lives so far out that he's got to drive a half an hour to bring his kids to school every day. Or it's even, you know, going to the grocery mart. Just right there. It's 2:30 in the morning and people are yelling on my street. And I live in the Adirondacks. You know? How strange is that? Not cool. Anyway, yeah, there's so much going on that we can't even understand. I know that when I heard that metallic noise where Tom Messick disappeared and I captured it, I didn't think I was going to be able to capture it. And it's in the video. I literally am talking to you guys and I'm saying, guys, I don't know if you can hear this, or if my mic's going to even be able to pick it up. But there's a metallic noise out here. And it was just the strangest thing. And I know people have heard it on those videos because it's, I mean, if that's not enough to make people realize that there is so much more going on than what we know, I don't know what else is. Anyway, thank you for supporting this channel. It is all of your support that helps the channel to continue to grow and go, and what gives us all a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories judgment-free. Everyone is simply treated with the respect that we deserve. Please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and our friends. These creatures are real. These events have happened. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless you all.